Hey, I'm John with Scout Realty. If you're watching this video, you have a house to sell. Listen, if you're like most sellers, you probably are trying to weigh out some things like, how do we make sure we can sell our house for the most amount of money and not leave any money on the table? You know, when's the best time to sell? How do we make sure that we don't sell ourselves out of a house and we're trying to purchase something else? What type of improvements should we do to the house to get the most money out of it? So there's just a lot of questions that a lot of sellers have when they're thinking about selling their house. Over the past 20 years, I have sold houses to thousands of people, and I want to teach you in just a few minutes maybe the best practices that I've discovered over the past 20 years so that you can make wise decisions, ultimately so that you can sell your house for the most money in the shortest period of time. So I'd like to take a few minutes just to help you become a smarter seller so that you can make wise decisions. So in every market, there's really two types of listings. When you actually take your house to the market, you're either going to be misaligned with the current market or you're going to be aligned with the current market. So what do I mean by that? Every time someone takes their house to market, they have an idea about what the price point should be. You may have some expectations around the condition, around the market, around the interest rates, around other competition. Really what I want you to understand is that markets are dynamic. They change on a weekly and monthly basis. And so anytime I'm talking to sellers, I want them to understand is that whenever you're taking your house to market, it's the most important thing to be aligned with that. So you have a product, you have your house, and then you're going to assign a price to that. And we want the market to respond very favorably. So taking your house to market is all about positioning. And we want it to be positioned with the existing market so that we don't waste time and money and that there's frustrations that don't build up. And so if you're going to have success in the market, it's important that you're aligned with your existing market. So you may be watching this video years down the road from when I'm filming it, and the markets do change. And so your agent should do a good job about helping you understand what is the existing market. Some of the slides that I'm going to share with you right now is going to help you have a great framework about how to discern what market you're in so that you make your best decision. The first thing I want you to understand is that a listing's performance is determined really by three things. The first thing is the market. And so when I speak about the market, I'm talking about there's an economy, there is current competition, so there's other houses that are also listed in your neighborhood or your area, and there's interest rates, and those interest rates can be high or low. So the markets can be stagnant. They can be a seller's market where they're favoring the sellers. They can be a buyer's market where they're favoring the buyers. So I just want you to understand that the first thing that determines a listing's performance is our market. The next thing that determines a listing's performance is the seller's decisions. And so the seller ultimately is going to choose the list price. Maybe they allow the agent to weigh in on what the value of the home is, but ultimately it's the seller's choice. The condition of the home is something that's really outside of the market's control. It's outside the agent's control. How you have kept the property, its condition, is in the seller's hands. The third thing that affects the listing's performance is how an agent brings the house to market. So there's really three things that an agent's going to do. The first thing is how they go about marketing your property. This is getting exposure. This is getting eyeballs and driving traffic to your listing. The second thing is how they negotiate. Are they a skilled negotiator? And then the third thing is their overall deal support. Deal support begins at your listing presentation and it ends at closing. So there's just a lot of deal support that's going to happen throughout the transaction. But this is the third thing that affects the listing's performance. So I want you to keep this in mind because what we talk about going forward is going to help frame this up. So there's four selling factors. Anytime you're going to sell your house, there's four things I want you to consider. The first thing is your showings. And so when we talk about showings on a listing, a house does not sell unless it gets shown. A well-priced listing leads to more showings and it compels buyers to take actions. So I tell my sellers all the time is like, I love sales. I love selling houses, but I can't sell a house if it's not getting showings. So we need to position this house, how we market it, the condition of the property, the overall price point, everything that goes into selling this house, we need to position it to increase the amount of showings. So that's the first thing. The second thing in terms of our selling factors is the overall characteristics of the house. So a home's characteristics includes the location of the home, the specifications, so like the bedrooms, baths, square footage, and then the overall condition of the home. Is it in top shape or does it have some room for improvement? Does it have some deferred maintenance? So a buyer makes their decision by comparing your property to other active listings that are also on the market. Therefore, it's important to make your best first impression when you first enter the market. So we want to put our best foot forward whenever we take a house to market. We want our best foot forward in photographs, in condition, in pricing, in marketing. So the next thing in selling factors is our pricing. So an attractive list price is the most effective marketing tool for generating buyer interest, receiving the best offer, and selling for the highest price. I often tell our sellers, listen, I don't care a lot about the list price. I care a whole lot about the sales price. And so a lot of times our list price is something that we want to use as a tool to be able to generate the best sales price. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in just a second, but I want us to understand that an attractive list price is going to help us to get more showings. The fourth selling factor is the overall timing on the market. So the market has a very short attention span. Pricing your home right the first time is key. Starting high and then dropping the price later fails to generate the best offer. So I want you to really understand these four selling factors, because I think that if you can internalize this, you understand the importance of getting an amount of showings, the importance of having a great condition of your house and the overall characteristics and how that impacts the sale. If you understand how pricing is really going to help your house sell for more money in less time. And then lastly, this issue of timing, how we want to make sure that when we take it to market, we have an element of speed to make sure that we get it in a contract in a timely manner. These things are going to help you sell your house. Now, a friend of mine, his name is Jason Pantana. He is a marketing coach, and this is something that I've kind of modified from his teaching, and this is what he says. Your property is never more valuable to a buyer than on the first day it's listed, driven by their instinct to act quickly for fear of losing out to someone else. However, as days turn into weeks, their urgency fades, and as a result, so does the property's perceived value. Your property attracts the most attention on the day it's listed because popular search platforms prioritize new listings. But as your listing ages, both visibility and buyer interest decline. So what we're trying to convey here is, in a sense, whenever you bring your house to market, it's a race against time. We want to make sure that when it comes out the gate, it performs as well as it could. We don't want to drift on the market because the perception of its value will start to decline. Anytime we're working with buyers, a lot of times if you see a house that's been listed for, let's just say, 30, 60, 90 days, a lot of times you'll have buyers will say, hey, listen, what do you think's wrong with this house? I thought this house would have sold by now. It must not be worth what they're asking for. So as those days accrue, people's perception of value does start to decline. So I want to avoid that at all costs in an effort to generate the highest price for your home. The next thing that I want to cover is our 7 selling principles. And so you think about a principle being like a law. It's something that's like immutable. It's something that doesn't matter the market. It doesn't matter the house. It doesn't matter the seller. It doesn't matter really the economic conditions or the interest rates at the time. These principles remain true in any market. So if you want success in selling your listing, you must align with all 7 principles. The first thing that I want you to know is that homes sell because there's a willing and able buyer. So what do I mean by that? Home values, they're determined by what a buyer is willing and able to pay for the home and what a seller is willing to accept for their home. The second principle that I want you to understand is that markets determine value. So agents and seller, really, they don't determine the home's value, the market does. So listing prices are always an estimate of value. Anytime you take a house to market, there is an assumption or a theory or a hypothesis that maybe this is the right price for the home. Maybe that price was discovered because we looked at past comps or we looked at current listings that we're competing with, and we felt like this may be the best price for us to enter the market. So anytime you're taking a house to market, there is an assumption of value, an estimate of value. So because markets respond to the trade-off of price and value, ultimately the market's going to tell you what the home is worth. So we don't determine the value, the market does. The third selling principle is that real estate is self-correcting. So here's what I mean by that. If you're priced too high, the home will not sell, and you will need to have price reductions to get the home to sell. But if you price the house a little bit too low, then you're going to get multiple offers and the price will get bid up. So I think that there's a huge risk in overpricing houses. If you're a seller who says, listen, I want to list a little bit high, I want to leave room for negotiation, or I don't want to leave money on the table, I just want to make sure I get everything I could have out of this house. Or maybe you're a seller who says, I really just want to test the market. We don't have to sell. We like to sell, but we don't have to. And so we're just going to put a big number out there. I really advise against that, because anytime that you try to take a house to market and you fail, that house is out there on the records forever as being a failed sell. Anytime you take a house to market and you don't need to sell, but it starts to accrue days on the market, the perception of its value is being diminished. Anytime you start to price reduce, I mean, it's kind of like you have blood in the water if you're a shark. I mean, people are like, oh, they must be desperate. So I think that understanding that real estate's self-correcting, and I would rather things move up than move down, is a better play. The fourth thing that I want you to understand is that a faster sell means more money for you. So time on the market affects the sales price. The faster a home sells, the higher the home will sell for. The listing sells slow, then it's going to sell low. So I always tell our sellers, like, man, we want to sell this thing fast. And I'm not trying to have a quick payday and just move on. I'm trying to ensure that there's some bit of urgency around your sale, some bit of leverage that we have on the buyers. I want to make sure that we can create a compressed timeline of sale to give you the best results. So if you want to make more money, let's sell fast. So that's the fourth principle. The fifth principle that I want you to understand is markets work for the seller. So sometimes sellers try to sell the house off the market. They may have a neighbor or have a friend that's looking to buy a house, and they say, hey, I can sell my house to you before it ever goes in the market. I think that a lot of times people leave money on the table whenever they sell their house off the market. So the fifth principle, markets work for the seller. You can't beat the market. You can only align with it. Because the market always produces the best buyer, the seller loses when they sell a house off the market. The market's your friend. Don't try to run away from the market. Get your house on the market. Even if you've already found someone who says, I want to buy your house off the market, say, that's great. I would love for you to own it. In 7 days, when we list our house in 7 days, if you're the best buyer in 7 days, I'd love for you to buy it. But for me to sell it off the market and not give people a response, an opportunity to respond and to purchase this house, I may be selling myself short. All right, so the sixth selling principle is that first impressions matter. The market has a short attention span, so you need to put your best foot forward when you bring the listing to market. If you miss the existing demand of buyers, then you will have to wait for new buyers, or you're going to need to reduce your price. So that's why I say, as soon as we take this house to market, you will never get a chance to make a first impression. Let's get it right the first time. If there's deferred maintenance that we need to do to this house, let's get it done. If there's staging that needs to happen, let's get it done. If there's any sort of inspection items, if we did an upfront home inspection and there's a list of things that we want to do, let's go ahead and do that. So let's make sure that we enter the market with our best foot forward. So the seventh selling principle is that showings produce sell. Houses do not sell unless they get shown. A well-priced home gets more showings. So you remember I just told this to you in our 4 selling factors about showings. We want to drive showings through the door. We want to get as many people to the door through a condensed time frame as possible. When you get a lot of showings, there's an indication about transparent competition there. You've actually shown the market's demand. And so I believe it's so important to get showings, and that's why a lot of times I like to use a lower list price to drive people through the door, ultimately in hopes that that price moves up to whatever the market would bear. The next thing that I want to cover with you is there's 10 things that I believe in selling a house. And so this list of 10 things has really been curated over the past 20 years of selling real estate, working with thousands of clients. If I had to boil it down to the 10 things I believe about selling houses, this is it. I think that if you can understand this, if you can internalize this, it will make you a smarter seller. So the first thing that I believe, and I hope that you adopt this mindset as your own, is that whoever sets the list price is responsible for achieving results and risking their own time and money. So what do I mean by that? Some sellers have an idea about what they want to get for their house. And let's just say for talking purposes, they say, I want to get $800,000 for my house. And if I don't sell it for $800,000, I'm not selling it. And maybe your agent has a different opinion. Maybe the market has a different opinion of value. So my thought process here is that whoever sets the actual list price, it's on them to get the results. And so it's really not fair for a lot of sellers to hire an agent and then tell the agent, here's my product or here's my house, here's the condition of the house, here's the price point, now go out there and give me the results that I'm looking for. I think that it's more of a dance. I think it's more of a collaboration. And so when we talk about whoever sets the list price is responsible for achieving the results, there's sometimes I think it makes sense for sellers to pay an upfront retainer or pay a monthly fee if they hire an agent and they give them a price point and they give them the product that could be misaligned with the market. So first thing I believe is that listing prices, whoever sets that is responsible for achieving the results. The next thing that I believe is that the only opinion of value that actually matters is the buyer who's willing to pay for the property. So I have had many scenarios in my career to where, I'll give you an example. A couple months ago, I had a seller who's going to sell their house, and it was an estate sale that they had inherited the house, and so they wanted to have the step-up basis in their taxes. They did an appraisal. They want to see what is this house worth before we go to sell it, so that we don't have to unnecessarily pay taxes on the house. So they give me the appraisal, and they said, this is what we want to list our house for. And I looked at the appraisal, and you know, the appraiser, in my opinion, did not do that great of a job. However, I'm not writing a check for this house. And frankly, they aren't either. They inherited it. And so they had this opinion of value from this appraiser that they wanted to take the house to market. And they really had a failed sell because the market was straight up rejecting the seller's, the appraiser's opinion of value. So what I'm looking for is what's the opinion of value that the market places on this house. And we have some methodology and a process to discover what that is, and we just don't rely upon past comps. We have a process to discover what is active buyers in the market think the value of this house is. The third thing that I believe is that if a seller wants to choose their time of sale, then they don't control the sales price. And conversely, if a seller wants to choose their sales price, then they don't control the time of sale. So let's just say for talking purposes, you have a house that right now is worth $500,000 and you think you have the best house on the block. You think that in the neighborhood this house is special for some reasons, and let's just say for talking purposes you actually want $550 for this house, and there's never been a house that has sold anywhere around you at $550, but you believe you have the best house and you want $550. If you said that I want $550 but I also want to sell it within the next 30 days, you have to pick one or the other. Do you choose the price point of $550 or do you choose 30 days? You can't really have it both ways. And so what I try to do with sellers is to understand, what do you prioritize? Are you prioritizing a specific date or timeline, or are you prioritizing a price point? Because you actually may be able to sell the house for $550,000, but the market may not be where it needs to be for it to be able to sell at $550,000. However, if you were to wait a year or two, the market actually may get to that price point. So that's why I would say is, like, if you have a price point, you may not be able to pick your time frame. And if you pick your time frame, I need to be out within 30 days, then you're going to discover what the market thinks about the value of your home is going to give you whatever the market would bear. So I would just ask you as a seller to think through, what are you prioritizing, a timeline or a price point? And if you value the timeline, you may need to be flexible on your price point. The next thing that I believe is that the market has rejected a listing if it has failed to sell within the first month. So whenever you take a house to market, this is a product, and you're offering this product to a pool of buyers. If your product has a price attached to it and the buyers are either A, not showing the property, B, they're showing the property but they're not making offers, or C, they may be making offers, or just, in your opinion of value, they're all lowball offers. If you're not getting your house sold in 30 days, I would say that the current market has rejected your house. And I know that for some sellers, that's kind of a hard pill to swallow. It's like, man, I think my house is awesome. I've been living here for years and I've done all this work on it. Like, why would someone not want my house? So I just want to kind of set this as a precedent with you, is that if your house is not sold, it's being rejected, okay? The next thing that I believe about selling houses is that being misaligned with the market only leads to wasted time and a lower sales price. So whenever you take this product to the market and you have a price point, like I said, some people may be just rejecting your house or not buying it. And so if you have a price point in a product that's just misaligned, it's going to waste your time, it's going to waste the agent's time, and it's going to lead to frustration. And so in an effort to limit frustration, in an effort to have a clear plan of attack on how we're going to sell this house, we want to make sure that we enter the market with a great price and a great product, and we have reasonable expectations about the market's demand on your property. The next thing that I believe about selling houses is that there is no amount of good marketing that can overcome a bad listing price. So I'll give you this example. Last year we were trying to sell a house for a client, and they were very zealous on the value of their home. They were wanting to sell it for $2.2 million. And we just felt like it was very misaligned with the market. They were a past client. We had sold maybe 8 or 9 houses for them in the past, and this was something that they've always been great to work with. They have been easy to work with, but this particular property, they had some very high expectations, and we just couldn't justify anywhere close to that market value. We thought that it would be somewhere around 175 to 1.8 at best. They were not having it. And so we marketed it and marketed and marketed and marketed and marketed. And this went on for like 6 months. And so there was a moment in this sales cycle to where we were struggling getting showings, and they started to reduce the price to 2.1 to 2.2 to 1.9 to 1.8. Okay, we got to where you're at, and I'm like, no. Where we were at 1.8, that was a best day scenario like 6 months ago. So like things have changed. It may not even be 1.8 now. We ended up, we were running a bunch of digital ads. We had run offline, like magazines, direct mail. Then we were running digital ads, like on Facebook. We had, as an example, on Facebook, we had 798,000 impressions on our ad campaigns to this house, and it still was not getting us showings. It was still, so when I talk about there is no amount of good marketing can overcome a bad price, that's what I'm talking about. I can't force feed the market a listing and for the market to say, oh, you know what, I've seen this house so many times, I'm actually going to overpay a couple $100,000 for it because I've just seen so many marketing advertisements about this. I just can't help myself but to overpay. That particular house, we ended up selling it for $1.675. That's a far cry from where they were wanting at 2.2, and it took us well over 6 months to get there. So my point being is that there's no amount of good marketing that can overcome a bad list price. If we would have had started out, I believe at 1.675, we would have probably gotten 14 offers out the first week of that, and it would have sold somewhere much higher than that. But because we slid and slid and slid so far down, we were desperate to get anybody to write an offer after 6+ months on the market. So no amount of marketing can overcome a bad list price. The next thing I want you to understand is that I believe that an attractive list price is the most effective marketing tool for generating buyer interest. So if you want to sell your house, you have to get showings. If you want showings, you're going to have to present a product and a price that outperforms the other competitors on the market, something that stands out, something that gets attention, something that drives demand. So to do that, we believe that an attractive list price is going to help us move to get the best sales price. The next thing is the sales price is more important than the list price. To get the best sales price, you need the best list price. So I said this a little bit earlier, it's like I don't care a lot about the list price. To me, the list price is a marketing tool to get the best sales price. In a sense, your marketing is the bait. The price is the hook. If we're going to catch a fish, I want a great price. Now, I definitely don't want to sell at that low price, but I want something to bring people in the door. So my goal here is for us to get the highest price, we need to have competition. For us to have a lot of competition, we need to have a lot of showings. For us to have a lot of showings, we need to introduce a product and a price on a property to be able to drive showings, and it has to be something that the market is provoked to take action. Like, man, this is an amazing house. We got to look at this house. We think the price is right. It may be even a deal. When you have that type of urgency, good things can happen on your listings. Next thing I want you to understand is that selling a home requires showings and conversations with buyers. A well-priced home maximizes sales opportunities. Now listen, when you hire an agent, you're hiring a sales professional. You're hiring someone to sell the house. I find it weird in real estate, I've been doing this for 20 years, but the person that you hire to sell your house a lot of times is actually not the person who's selling the house. Typically, there's a lockbox in the front of the house, and there is a buyer's agent who unlocks the door, tours their client around, and the buyer's agent's the one that has the influence on the house. Now, we have a different method in how we sell houses, and we'll talk about that in other contexts. But right now, I just want you to understand is that for us to sell this house, we need to have conversations. So I want to give myself as many at-bats as I possibly can to be able to sell a house. And we do that by creating something, a bit of urgency around the house, creating a compelling value proposition to the marketplace, and having a process by which we get a number of buyers all competing for the exact same property. The last thing I believe about selling real estate is that we believe transparent competition identifies the best buyer and determines the property's true market value. And so anytime I take a listing to market, I know that there's a race against time, and our goal here is we want to create a transparent, competitive environment for the market to respond to the property. And so if you have one house that 6 or 7 people all want the exact same house, 6 or 7 people are all working to be able to offer the best terms, the best conditions, the best price for a house so that the seller selects them, that right there is a recipe for getting the highest and best price for your house. That helps you sell your house for the most money in the shortest period of time. So these are the 10 things that I believe around selling real estate. This is a methodology, a philosophy about real estate that I hope you as a seller adapt as you take your house to market. Now, I want to talk to you about building a marketplace. So if you're going to take your house to market, we want there to be a marketplace, an ecosystem, like a bunch of buyers who are vying for the same property. You know, a lot of times if you were to look at like an auction, if they're going to sell art or sell diamonds or sell cars, like anytime that you have an audience who are all raising their paddles for the exact same thing to purchase, you're going to have something of irrational exuberance. Like people get very excited, they want to buy something when there's scarcity. There's only one product that they can buy. There's a lot of people who want the same thing. So that's why we find it to be really important for us to build a marketplace around the listing. So the first thing to build a marketplace is we want to gain exposure. Now, we want to market the listing to get the attention of buyers. So when we talk about gaining exposure, there's really a two-pronged approach to this. The first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be able to get the marketing out to bring attention and awareness. But the price, remember I said that the price is the greatest marketing tool that you have available to you. So if you have great marketing material with a price point, like I just told you, of a house that's overpriced, it didn't matter how many digital marketing ads that we ran. Like I told you, we had 798,000 impressions. I mean, pretty much everybody in my town had seen that listing probably a couple times. I mean, but we were just trying to force feed the market, and everyone's like, I'm not overpaying for it. So that's why I said the greatest marketing tool that you have is your listing price. When you layer on good marketing, even great marketing to a great price, it's magical. You have a lot of buyers who has attention. They have awareness that this property is on the market and it's available. So the first step is we want to gain exposure. The second step is we want to build demand. So we want to withhold showings. We don't let people look at the house whenever they want to. We want to hold showings to build the desire of buyers. So that's why we like to list houses earlier in the week and hold all showings until the open house on the weekend. So whenever there's like a window, say 2, 3, 4, 5 days, however long the sales cycle is going to be, that people want to get in the house, I start to build a list. Here's all the people who have called on this house that are clamoring to get in. They know that the open house is going to be on Sunday between 2 and 4, and that's the first time that this house is available to be seen. When you do that, and all of a sudden the cars are parked down the street, the front yard's full of people, there's people on the house, that's transparent competition. When people can see, like, man, there's a lot of people who want this house. But when you allow people to passively schedule an appointment where they can go and unlock a door and go through the home with their agent at their convenience, first off, that disrupts the seller's life because they're getting scheduled showings incrementally. I like there to be a grand opening on the house so that there's transparent competition, that they say, okay, we're going to need to be a lot stronger in our offers because there's a lot of people who also want this house. So we want to build that desire and not let the buyers see the house on their terms. We want the buyers to come see the house on our terms. Now, The third step in building a marketplace is we want to create scarcity. When we talk about scarcity, we do this by hosting an open house, and it's going to trigger the emotions of buyers. Like I said, when you see transparent competition, when you see other people who also are showing buying signs, and you're like, I see someone, they're walking around the kitchen too, and they like it just as much as we like it, there is some sort of emotional trigger that's going off in people's mind that's like, I'm going to have to step up and make a very strong, compelling offer to even have a chance at purchasing this house. So that's what we want to do, is we want to create scarcity to trigger buyers' emotion. The fourth step in building a marketplace is we want to create competition. So when you create competition, this is the way in which we get multiple offers to get a response from buyers. And so anytime we take a house to market, my goal is to have a handful of offers for our sellers to consider. Now, we have a process, a sales process in which we do that for our sellers to get multiple offers. It's a method of the madness. It's something that we have perfected over the years. And so even in soft markets, we apply these principles because we don't want to just identify the first buyer in a marketplace, the first one that writes an offer that we go into contract on. We want to identify the best buyer. And so you only identify the best buyer by going through these four steps. So if you're going to sell your house, make sure that you have a clear plan on how you're going to build a marketplace. The next thing I want you to understand is that not every house listed is sold. And so there's a terminology that we have in our industry called a clearance rate. And ultimately, a clearance rate is going to measure which houses have gone to market, which have actually closed out. So typically the traditional clearance rates, I mean, the markets, they vary, but typically the first time a house is listed, it has about a 30 to 50% chance of it selling the first time. You'll have some people who go to market, they ended up realizing they've overpriced their house, they want to take it off the market and relist it at a lower price. You'll have some people go to market, it falls out of contract when it was under because of a home inspection, because of an appraisal, because of a financing contingency, and they have to take the house and put it back on the market and start all the way back over. You have some people who just try to sell the house and they just get so discouraged, they just, we're just going to stay put, we're not going to sell this house. So when we talk about a clearance rate, traditional listings typically have a clearance rate of about 30 to 50%. And so it's one of those things that I think every seller needs to be aware, is that there are houses that are expired and have been withdrawn, and so those are failed listings. So we want to make sure that you're aware of that so that we don't have a listing that falls through. The way that we sell a house, and we talked about building a marketplace, when we build a marketplace, typically we are selling houses 89% of the time the first time it's listed. Now, there's sometimes things don't work out, but our process of sale is designed to make sure that it sticks the first time and closes the first time. So we really do a pretty good job of outperforming the market by creating a marketplace around your listing. The next thing I want you to know about is market engagement. So when you take a house to market, it looks a lot like this when you sell your house traditionally. Whenever a seller says, we want to test the market, we want to list a house a little bit high to leave room for negotiation, they start off with an opening price. If they fail to sell the house, if the market's responding, it's like, hey, we're not getting offers, we're not getting showings, you're going to start to have price reductions. Eventually, the listing may go into contract. And we see a lot of times listings who get a contract end up falling out of contract, whether it's because of inspection, because of appraisal contingency, because of financing contingency, a home sale contingency. And when that happens and you fall out of contract, you have to start all the way back over. Or sometimes, let's just say they didn't start back over, they just want to extend the closing date because they were unable to get financing in a quick enough time frame, or their house has yet to sell. I don't like extending closing dates. And then furthermore, sometimes people have home inspections and there's some things that are discovered to where they have to come back and renegotiate, or the appraisal comes in low and they have to come back and renegotiate. So my point here is that when you follow this approach, you're really negotiating down. So you have a choice. You can negotiate down or you can negotiate up. To me, this is a loser's game. I don't want to negotiate down. When you're looking for the first buyer, not the best buyer, you're missing out on opportunities whenever you only finally get one offer. That's why I'm looking for multiple offers to select the best one. So in the traditional method, high days on the market and stagnant prices leads to declined engagement and showings. Ultimately, contract contingencies expose the seller to closing uncertainties. So these are not good, but most of the time this is what everybody does. We find is that in the marketplace method, the way that we sell houses by building a marketplace, we're able to negotiate up. So we find a starting price, a list price, that is what we would believe is lower than maybe market value. And we start to have offers that are coming in. Ultimately, our sellers have a seller's reserve that they're not going to sell the house below a certain amount, but that's just something that us and the sellers know. But as we're starting to get these offers that are building up, we want to create this marketplace to be able to produce the best buyer that sells maybe even more money than what the market could even bear if it was a traditional listing. So we want to attract a lot of buyers so we can sell to the best buyer, all right? A couple things that I want you to know about this in the way that we create a marketplace is we believe in transparent competition. We believe that whenever there's an emotional trigger of fear of loss from buyers, they're going to put their best foot forward and maybe even outperform the market. We believe that whenever there's leverage in the sale, so such as you can't see the house until the open house, that's 3 or 4 days from now. You can't place an offer that we would accept until we call for highest and best in 3 or 4 days from now. We give windows of opportunities for the market to step into. And then last is we believe in having confidence in the purchase. So whenever we take a house to market and we produce this a marketplace method around listings, we do upfront home inspections, upfront appraisals, we do title searches. We want to de-risk the sales cycle so that things do not fall through. And when you front load those things, good things can happen. So, my question for you is, do you want to negotiate down or do you want to negotiate up? By negotiating down with price reductions, we tell our sellers, listen, anytime you start to accrue days on the market, it's a public display of failure. So if you miss the first week and you're on the second week, you miss the first month, you're on the second month, every day that goes by is a public display of failure. Every price reduction that you have is a public display of failure. If you have too many price reductions or they're too much, they're like, hey, the seller was either A, unrealistic on the front end, or B, they're desperate. That is not an effective way to make sure that you don't leave money on the table. The next thing that I want you to see is just the choice that our sellers have to make around the sales timeline. Traditionally, you may have 6 months, and I'm just kind of laying this out there. Sometimes it's much, much faster. But the average listing is getting about 3 price reductions right now. And so let's just say for talking purposes, you didn't sell your house the first month, but the second month you want to have a price reduction. Third month you want a price reduction. Fourth month you have a price reduction. And let's just say for talking purposes, you finally get an offer. But that offer has a due diligence period. For 10, 21 days, they want to do a home inspection. They want to do a loan approval. They want to make sure they have a good appraisal. They have had any sort of contingencies if they had a home sale. They want to make sure there's clear title. So there's all this work that goes into the due diligence period that could cause the house to fall out of contract. And so we see during this due diligence period, once you finally get an offer, is that there are many contracts that get renegotiated, which means the seller is getting less money or less favorable terms. We also see a lot of contract extensions, so the seller's not able to pack and plan with confidence because during this due diligence period, things get pushed off even farther. Or at worst case scenario, it falls out of contract. So if a property fails to contract, future buyers have leverage that the property has a tarnished reputation. And the reason why this is so important to get right the first time is if the house goes right back on the market as it fell out of contract, every buyer from then going forward is like, something's wrong with this house. I wonder what's wrong with this house. And it fell out of contract. You absolutely do not want to find yourself in that position. That's why we like to create a marketplace. We call it our marketplace method. We want to front load all of that due diligence before we ever take a house to market. We want to make sure we can de-risk things for our sellers. We do not want any surprises. And so we have a methodology in which pretty much all of our listings can be under contract with a non-refundable deposit, with non-contingent offers within the first month. And so when you do that, you just have a much higher probability to be able to close. And so that brings us to the end of this training for you as a seller. My goal in this is that you are prepared to make wise decisions. My goal in this was that you have a clear perspective and a plan about how you can ensure that you sell your house for the most money in the shortest period of time. If you're interviewing other agents, this may be something that kind of you've got some ideas of, like, hey, I want to make sure I'm asking some clear questions about what their process is to ensure that I'm having multiple buyers all compete for the same property. So at Scout, this is how we sell houses. At Scout, this is something that we have perfected by selling thousands of houses. It's something that we believe is really important for our sellers, and we cannot wait to talk to you. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We'll talk to you soon.